I never wanted any of this. Just a regular guy caught up in a galaxy at war, trying to keep my family safe. But my daughter? She's not exactly what she seems. There's tech no one's supposed to know about, memories that get messed with, and people who'll do anything to control it all. This is my story, the battles, the secrets, and the fight to hold on to what makes us human. If you think surviving's easy, you haven't heard our side yet. Welcome to the last archive of Rael Torma, a story about war, family, and the things we fight for when everything else is falling apart. Over the next few hours, you're going to dive deep into one man's life, his struggles, and the secrets that could change the fate of an entire galaxy. So settle in, get comfortable, and let me take you through the memories, the battles, and the hard choices that shaped Rael's world. Thanks for listening. Let's get started. Prologue. The first time I saw the sky burn, I was just a boy. Not much older than 10, my father pointed up, his voice tight with something I didn't understand then. Look, Rael. That's not just fire. It's the beginning of everything changing. The city around us was quiet, the kind of quiet that presses against your ears, waiting. The kind you don't want to break. Above us, the horizon glowed red, like the sun had cracked open and spilled its guts. The stars vanished behind a wall of smoke and ash. I remember how the air tasted, sharp, bitter, like metal burning in my mouth. My mother grabbed my hand, her fingers trembling. Stay close, she said softly, her voice barely a whisper. I don't want to lose you. But I knew we were already lost. That night, the war began. Chapter 1. I was born in a city called Varelia, back when it still had trees. Not just the filtered domescape kind, either. Real ones. Green, breathing things that cracked the sidewalks and dropped leaves in your hair when you walked to school. We lived on the 12th platform, not high enough for a good view, but just far enough from the spill zones when the refinery alarms went off. My father said that was lucky. It means we live right in the middle of the problem, he joked once, stirring his synth tea with a crooked spoon. Just close enough to smell the smoke. Just far enough to think we're safe. That was the kind of man he was, half humor, half warning. I remember the morning after the first strike hit the outer belt. I was sitting on the living room floor, building a model skimmer out of rusted toy parts. The sirens hadn't stopped for hours. Red light pulsed through the windows like a heartbeat. Outside, people were running. Not in chaos exactly, more like quiet urgency. The kind where nobody screams, because screaming would make it real. My older brother, Jeren, paced near the door, suit half-zipped, visor clipped to his belt. Where are they moving evac? He asked, not looking at me, just out the window. They didn't say, my father answered, voice low. Just that the transport hubs are filling up. Mom was in the kitchen, packing nutrient packs into a bag she'd used for groceries 2 days ago. She moved fast, but she kept checking the hallway, like she expected someone to show up at the door and change everything again. I held up the half-finished skimmer. Do you think this one could fly if it were real? I asked quietly. Jeren turned, finally noticing me. His face softened a little, but only for a second. Yeah, he said, kneeling down beside me. If you gave it a strong enough core. Maybe a dual-vector engine. He ruffled my hair, then stood, but you shouldn't be building right now. We might have to move quick. That was the moment it started to sink in. Whatever quick meant, it wasn't temporary. By nightfall, the transmission came in, a sharp tone rang through every speaker in the city, followed by the same message repeated in 7 languages. I don't remember the exact words, just how they felt: cold, official, final, mandatory civilian relocation notice, Tier 1 evacuation is now active, all non-military personnel TO report to Zone Gate 12. No exceptions. My father stood in the middle of the room, holding the data tablet like it weighed 100 kilos. This isn't about belt mining disputes anymore, he said quietly. My mother's voice cracked. You think it's war? He didn't answer, but I knew it in my gut, that burnt sky wasn't an accident. And whatever had started out there among the distant rocks. It was coming here. We left our home with 1 bag each. My skimmer model stayed behind, half-built on the floor. I turned to look one last time before the door sealed shut. Not at the walls or the furniture. Just at the window, where the smoke still crawled across the stars. I thought maybe if I stared hard enough, I could still see the trees, but they were already gone. The gate at 12. Gate 12 didn't look like a lifeline, it looked like a freight yard someone had slapped a military logo onto and called organized. Steel fences, rusted gates, guards who looked more exhausted than alert. Everything smelled like coolant and bodies, too many people packed into too little space, waiting for a transport that might never come. Jeren kept one hand on my shoulder as we moved through the crowd. He wasn't much older than 16, but already he looked like a soldier. Not because of the gear, he didn't have any, but because of the way he watched everything, jaw locked tight, scanning faces like he expected one of them to explode. "Stay close," he said through clenched teeth. "If you get separated, climb something. Shout. Don't wait." I nodded, but my throat was dry. I didn't trust my voice to work anyway. Mom kept clutching the evac papers like they were sacred, holding them against her chest as if someone might try to steal them. Dad walked beside her, quiet, his eyes locked on the gate ahead. There were people shouting in the distance, angry voices near one of the terminals. A woman's scream cut through the noise, sharp and short. No one around us reacted. They'd already learned to look away. "Gate 12 is closed," a soldier barked as we reached the checkpoint. "You missed the second pulse. You'll be redirected to overflow." Dad stepped forward, holding out the papers. "These are priority tier, Sector 3, ID verified." His voice was steady, not loud, but certain. The soldier scanned the dock tab with a flick of her wrist, then sighed. "Fine. You're in the hold queue. Bay 4. We were herded into a hangar that looked like it had been used for scrap storage a week ago. They'd cleared most of it, but the scent of machine oil still clung to the walls. Cots were bolted to the floor in uneven rows. Lights flickered overhead. Somewhere in the back, a child coughed non-stop, a dry, hollow sound that didn't stop even when his mother tried to hush him. We took our place on the edge of a cot row. Jeren sat with his back to the wall, watching the entrance. "This is a nightmare," he muttered. Dad didn't respond. He was staring at the ceiling. "You okay?" Mom asked gently, brushing his hand with hers. He blinked once. "Slow. I worked on this hangar," he said. "Years ago. Ran the coolant valves on the east side. Thought it'd be for freight runners." His hand curled into a fist. "Didn't think I'd be sleeping here. With my family." That night, the first shuttle out of Gate 12 exploded during lift. We heard the blast from inside the hangar, metal screaming, then a sound like thunder slamming against your chest. The walls shook. Lights flickered out. People screamed, then silence. Jeren pulled me down, shielding me with his arms. I didn't try to move. I just stared at the hangar doors, wide open now, and the fire rising beyond them. For a moment, the night sky lit up again, just like before. Orange and violent. A soldier came in minutes later. "Remain in place. This facility is now under lockdown until further notice." No one argued. No one even spoke. The war hadn't arrived at our doorstep yet, but it had definitely found the front gate. 3 days after the blast at Gate 12, they moved us. No explanation, no real plan. Just a string of transports that showed up at dawn and a set of names barked over a speaker. Dad said we were lucky to get reassigned. Jeren didn't believe in luck anymore. "This place is worse," he muttered as we stepped off the transport. "They're dumping people out here like cargo." The new facility didn't even have a name, just a designation, Grid 9 West. An old mining outpost, probably decommissioned before I was born. The walls were patched with mismatched metal plates, and there were still faded logos from a collapsed corporate syndicate, some name I couldn't even pronounce. The air was dry. Dust got in your throat when you breathed. Inside, they split families into numbered dorm blocks. Ours was Block C7. A row of metal bunks, 2 latrines for 30 people, and a mess hall that served warm paste in unmarked bowls. There were no windows. I asked my father how long we'd stay. He looked at me like I'd asked him how long the stars would last. "Until someone up there decides we're worth moving," he said. His voice was tired. Not angry. Not even scared. Just thin. That night, I met her. I was trying to fix a busted air circulator in the corner of our block. Not because anyone asked me to, just because I needed something to do with my hands. She appeared out of nowhere, small, quiet, maybe a year younger than me. She wore an oversized jacket that hung off one shoulder, and her hair was shaved on one side, like she'd done it herself. "You're doing it wrong," she said flatly. I turned, startled. "What?" She pointed at the vent coil. "You've got the tubing backward. It's pushing exhaust into the wall loop. You're gonna choke everyone. I blinked, then looked closer. She was right. You a mechanic? I asked. She shrugged. My mom was. I watched her fix everything. Until she couldn't anymore. The way she said it, like it didn't hurt, but also like it never stopped hurting, froze me for a second. I'm Rael, I said. Kaeli, she replied. We worked on the vent together for the next hour. She didn't smile much. But she didn't flinch when the unit sparked either. I liked her instantly. Over the next few weeks, the routine set in. Every morning, roll call, nutrient distribution, basic labor assignments. Adults were cycled through processing. Some returned to the dorms, others vanished without explanation. Dad got flagged for administrative clearance because of his past engineering work. Jeren signed up for grid patrol. He was too young, but no one cared. I'd rather carry a shock baton than sit here and rot, he told Mom one night. She didn't argue. Just kissed his forehead and handed him her ration bar. Kaeli and I explored the tunnels below the grid when no one was looking. We found old machines, broken conduits, forgotten service doors. One of them had a shattered screen, flickering with half-dead code. Kaeli squinted at it. You see that? She asked, what is it? I leaned in, military routing software. But look, someone rewrote part of it. Not recently. Before we got here. Why? She looked up at me, her expression colder than a kid's face should be. Because this place was used before. Not for evac. For storage. People, Rael. They've done this before. That night, I asked my father if he'd ever heard of Grid 9 West being used before. He didn't answer. Just looked at the floor for a long time, then he said, some things get buried. Doesn't mean they're gone. I didn't sleep much after that. When the food stopped coming, they cut the food shipments on a Tuesday, no warning. No reason. That morning, we lined up at the mess hall like always, gray trays in hand, heads down, half asleep. But the doors stayed sealed. 2 guards stood outside, weapons powered up. Behind them, a man in a processing uniform read from a script on a handheld speaker. Due to supply chain disruption, rations are suspended until further notice. All residents must return to assigned blocks and await further instruction. People didn't move. A woman shouted, my son hasn't eaten in 2 days. Someone else yelled, we saw the supply drones land yesterday. The guard raised his voice, this is not a discussion. Return to your quarters immediately. That's when someone threw the first tray. It hit the wall near the speaker and clattered to the floor. A second later, the entire crowd surged forward. I don't remember how it started exactly. I just remember the sound. Not like the war outside, no missiles or sirens. Just fists and boots and screaming. I saw an old man slam his shoulder into the mess hall door. A girl I didn't know bit a soldier's arm. Someone tried to climb the fence that bordered the power cells, and when the arc field kicked in, the screen cut through all the rest. Jeren pulled me back, get out of the line. He shouted, I need to find Kaeli. I yelled, forget her, move. But I couldn't. I slipped through a break in the crowd, ducked behind a stack of crates, and bolted toward Block B. Kaeli always scavenged near the storage bay. I found her crouched by a vent panel, prying it open with a chipped tool. You're really doing this now? I gasped. Kaeli looked up, calm, they're burning the surplus. I saw them bring barrels into the side bay. People are rioting. They're meant to, she said. Keeps them focused. Keeps them scared. I stared at her, how do you know this stuff? She hesitated. Her eyes flicked toward the ceiling, as if she were listening to something I couldn't hear. I hear things, she said finally. From the walls. From the machines. My mom used to call it the second channel. I didn't understand it then. A long pause, I do now. By the time we made it back to Block C, the riot had been crushed, 10 people were gone, arrested or worse. A power conduit had ruptured. The mess hall was locked down completely, and the guards now patrolled in pairs, visors down, stun rifles out. My mother held me tightly when I came in. Where were you? She asked. Nowhere, I lied. Jeren didn't look at me. He was sitting against the wall, staring at his hands. That night, he took a job offer from the Internal Grid Authority, a local enforcer post. He'd wear the same uniform as the men who'd beaten evacuees that morning. "I'm doing this for us," he said later, when we were alone. "They promised clearance for the whole block if I stay clean. I can get us reassigned. Out of here." I didn't argue. I just looked at him and felt something I didn't have a word for yet. It wasn't anger, it wasn't fear, it was the first crack between us, and once it formed, it never really went away. The wrong file. 2 months passed, enough time for routine to become ritual. Wake up. Roll call. Work assignment. Return. Repeat. I'd been transferred to relay maintenance, a dim corridor of flickering terminals that controlled outgoing data traffic. The tech was ancient, but some of it still hummed with authority. Even the guards avoided the core relays. I liked it there. Quiet. Hidden. Clean in a way the rest of Grid 9 West wasn't. And I was good at it. "You've got fingers like a spider," said Chief Merrick, a heavy man with breath that smelled like metal polish. "Keep it up and they'll fast-track you for off-grid processing." I didn't ask what that meant. I nodded and kept pulling damaged memory wafers from the diagnostic trays. One evening, while I was running a system scrub, a line of corrupted packets flagged red on my monitor. I tapped into the diagnostic shell to isolate them, probably a bad loop from the outbound queue, but it wasn't. What I found was a civilian classification file. One of the secure ones, coded under AES-7 lockdown. That alone should have bounced me out. But for some reason, it didn't. The file opened like a breath held too long. It was a person's evac profile. Name, age, origin, status, deceased in transit. But there was a problem. I recognized the name. It was my father, and he was still alive, same face. Same ID number. But the file had been modified, 2 days after we arrived in Grid 9 West. Someone had gone into the core database and marked him dead, and then buried the update in a queue never meant to be accessed by civilians. My hands trembled. I checked 3 more files from our block. All the same, dead on paper. Alive in the grid. I told Kaeli first. We were sitting near the old service ladder behind the comms junction, our usual hideout. She didn't look surprised. "They're cleaning the records," she said. "Anyone who doesn't make noise disappears." "Why?" She looked at me with that eerie calm. "Because dead people don't file complaints. And dead people don't get relocated." That stuck with me. She reached into her jacket and pulled out a wafer, old, scratched, barely holding together. "I found this in a dead guard's locker," she said. "Encrypted. I can't read it. But I think you can." "Me? You're better with loops than you think." I took the wafer. It burned cold in my palm, back in the relay chamber. I waited until the night shift guards rotated out. Then I plugged it in. It wasn't just a data drive, it was a routing key, one that unlocked a backdoor path into the broader grid network. The kind used by high-level operators. Inside were logs, schedules, surveillance clips, and at the bottom, an audio message. I hit play. A voice crackled through, female, older, deliberate. "If you're hearing this, I'm already out or dead. Doesn't matter which. They're turning Grid 9 West into a shadow archive. People aren't evacuees. They're test material. For something buried deep. Deeper than even command knows. If you can find the blueprint room, get it out." I sat frozen. Kaeli leaned over. "What blueprint room?" I looked at her. "No idea. But we're gonna find it." Jeren came in late that night, uniform stained with ash, visor cracked. "You okay?" I asked him. He stared at the floor. "Had to break up a fire in Block F. Kids lit a trash bin to boil water. Orders were to detain everyone." "You didn't, right?" He didn't answer. "Jeren." He looked up at me. His face was blank. "Go to bed, Rael." And he walked away. Beneath the map, Grid 9 West was never meant to last. The layout was fractal, cobbled together from pre-war shelters and reused orbital frame housing. A quarter of it wasn't even in the official blueprints. We learned that the hard way. Kaeli called them ghost levels. Service shafts, defunct filtration tunnels, blackout corridors the system forgot, or chose to forget. That's where we started looking. "Up here," Kaeli whispered, pushing open a rusted access hatch behind the med bay. I followed, my boots slipping on the ladder. The shaft led to an overhead passage, barely 2 meters high. Cables ran along the walls like veins. A single emergency light flickered every few steps. I counted the vents, Kaeli said quietly. There's airflow where there shouldn't be. Someone's pulling power down here. We walked for half an hour in silence. The air was colder, and then we found it. A sealed security door, old tech, manual override, coated with a military patch I didn't recognize. I pulled the wafer from my jacket and slotted it into the jack. Click, the lock disengaged. The door groaned open. Inside was a room full of holotanks. Dozens. Maybe more. They flickered softly, each displaying different schematics, neuromap overlays, genome sequences, linguistic pattern loops, biometric stress readings. I stepped closer. One of the tanks was labeled, Subject Series 3B, Hybrid Interface Cognition. Kaeli stared at it. 3B. She whispered. A console buzzed nearby. I accessed it. The logs were encrypted, but I found fragments, test dates, response levels, viability percentages. The subjects weren't volunteers. They were children, refugees flagged during intake scans, rerouted into off-grid clinical trials. Experiments focused on non-human integration potential, Kaeli. I said slowly, that your name's not on any of these. She turned to me, because I was never registered, she said. My mother paid off our intake officer. Changed our tags. She told me never to give them my real blood sample. Why? Kaeli hesitated. Then said, softly, because she wasn't human. We sat there for a long time, surrounded by the hum of ghost machines. I asked, you knew all along? No, she said. Just pieces. Feelings. Static in my head. Words that didn't belong to me. And now? I think they want to find the others. But they don't want hybrids, they want to copy them. Strip the parts they like. Burn the rest. We copied the files we could onto a portable crystal and sealed the room behind us. I didn't say it out loud, but I knew something had shifted in me too. This wasn't just about hidden files or unfair systems anymore. This was about identity. About control, about what they were willing to destroy just to build something they could name. That night, Jeren found me sitting outside the relay corridor. You've been quiet. He said, sitting down beside me, just tired. I muttered. He nodded. I've been promoted. They want me to join the Clearance Council. That's the group that decides who gets reassigned, right? Yeah. I stared at him. You going to help us get out? He looked away. There's a list. A process. I can't break it. You mean you won't? Rael, don't, I snapped. Don't act like this is normal. Like they didn't shut off food. Like people aren't vanishing. Jeren's voice turned cold. You think this place is bad? You haven't seen what's out there. I have. I've seen what they do to the ones who leave. I'm trying to keep you alive. I stood up. No. You're trying to keep your rank. And I walked away, the signal that shouldn't exist. Kaeli didn't sleep that night. I found her at the edge of the power corridor, kneeling by the old broadcast panel, eyes locked on a faded terminal, fingers trembling like they were tuning into something only she could feel. There's something talking, she said softly. It's probably feedback, I replied, watching her work. She shook her head. No. It's structured. Repeating loops. I hear words in it. What kind of words? She didn't answer. Just plugged her crystal into the socket and began recording the static. I crouched beside her, trying to follow the readouts. It was all noise to me, modulated waves and corrupted pulses. But Kaeli. Kaeli closed her eyes and started speaking. Fragment 41, Relay 6. Repeating transmission. Unknown protocol. Confirm hybrid viability. Confirm code. Confirm. Her voice shifted, deeper, colder. Like it wasn't entirely her voice anymore. Confirm arc lineage. The air felt electric. We took the sample back to the old relay station. I ran the signal through every filter I knew. It shouldn't have existed. The format was pre-Exodus. It predated the refugee grid. Preceded even the core command structure, but it was bouncing through the spine of Grid 9 West. Hopping node to node like it was alive. Where's it coming from? Kaeli asked. I stared at the screen. There's no origin trace. It's not sent. It's emerging. Like the grid itself is speaking. She nodded, almost like she'd expected that answer, I think. It's been waiting for me. I tried to leak the hybrid data that night. I wrapped the files in a diagnostics envelope, routed them through a patch point Jeren showed me months ago, one that led to external channels. The upload began, then froze, the screen flashed red, unauthorized transmission. Location locked. I turned to run, but the door behind me opened, 2 guards stepped in, and behind them. Jeren. He didn't say anything, he didn't have to. They pulled me into an interrogation booth, a cold cube with 1 table and 3 lights. No windows. No clocks. Just time stretched like a noose. The woman who walked in wasn't from Grid 9 West. Her uniform was clean. Her boots were polished. Her eyes were sharp in a way I didn't like. Rael Torma, she said, sitting across from me. Student. Grid technician. Volunteer evacuee. And now. Potential subversive. Who are you? I asked. She smiled politely. I'm Administrator Senya. I run this sector now. I laughed dryly. Great. Another uniform. I'm not here to punish you, she said. I'm here to understand you. And possibly offer you something useful. I didn't answer. She leaned in. You've touched something you weren't supposed to. And it touched back. I want to know how. They released me after 6 hours. No charges. No escort. I walked out into the cold corridors and found Kaeli waiting by the power junction, eyes scanning every shadow. You okay? She asked quietly. Define okay. She studied my face. They're scared. Of what? She hesitated. Of me. That night, Kaeli sat on the relay floor and began sketching. I watched over her shoulder. They weren't just drawings, they were schematics. Circular. Precise. Each shape mirrored the holotank overlays we saw in the blueprint room. You don't remember making these? I asked. No, she whispered. They're just. There. I touched one of the sketches. It pulsed, faintly, like it recognized me, and that's when I realized something terrifying. Kaeli wasn't just connected to the signal, she was the signal. Kaeli didn't bleed right. I noticed it when she scraped her hand on a fractured vent shaft. Just a nick, barely enough to sting. But the blood wasn't fully red, it shimmered, thin strands of silver ran through it, catching the light like thread in a tapestry. You see it too, she whispered, holding her hand under the dim light. I nodded slowly. You didn't tell me. I wasn't sure until now, she said. I thought I was just different. Now I think I'm engineered. I didn't know what to say, so I didn't. That morning, I accessed the off-grid archive room using an old admin pass that shouldn't have still worked. It was buried 3 floors below the sanitation core. The door wasn't labeled. Just a blank wall that slid open when I tapped my ID 3 times fast and whispered the word Corinth. Kaeli's mother's name. Inside were cold lights and rows of memory spines, thousands of hours of sealed wartime records. I filtered by project tag, Hybrid Interface Initiative. A name surfaced, Dr. Corinth Vell, Lead Specialist, Neurogenetic Division. I pulled the file and watched the holo. She was younger than I expected. Half frothy. Skin like black marble laced with gold veins. Her voice was calm. Scientific. Controlled. The ARC lineage must be tested in sealed environments. Hybrid children will be incubated under genetic suppression to prevent early onset of trans chatter. If integration fails, subjects will be memory wiped and redirected. The log cut to a new frame. Kaeli, she was just a baby. Crying, subject 3B shows potential. Unstable signal echo. Recommend burial under false ID. Tag the mother. I stared at the image. Kaeli had never seen this. She didn't know her mother hadn't just protected her, she designed her. When I returned, Kaeli was pacing the corner of the maintenance hall, hands trembling. I feel them, she whispered. Who? The others. They're waking up. I froze. What do you mean? She looked at me, eyes wide and glowing faintly under the flickering lights. There were more of us. She hid us in different grids. Split our frequencies so we wouldn't merge. But something's changed. Someone's activating them. Meanwhile, Jeren was facing his own choice. Administrator Senya called him in for a private session. I didn't hear the words, but I watched from a vent shaft as she slid a data key across the table. Clearance for Sector 2, she said calmly. Escape from this trash heap. A real life. Jeren stared at the key. What's the price? You know what it is. He didn't say anything, he just sat there, shaking. That night, the echo drones arrived, small. Silent. Black as obsidian and shaped like spiders with 3 glowing eyes. They hovered at head height, drifting through halls like ghosts. No announcement. No warning. One of them followed me for 10 straight corridors without blinking. Kaeli tried to jam its signal, it adapted instantly. They're not machines, she whispered. They're listeners. I asked, who are they listening for? She didn't answer, but we both knew. The walls were closing in, Senya was hunting, the signal was rising, Kaeli was changing, and somewhere in the dark, the other hybrids were waking up. All we could do was run faster than the storm could find us.